going to talk today about inspections and how to utilize inspections and stuff like that, and to move past that, and how do you get past your inspections. A lot of people I know, even with my own agents, are very weak when it comes to. Are you practicing golf swing there, Bobby?
Sir.
I know, right? I'm in a feisty mood myself. Let's get rolling. But anyways, so a lot of people don't handle inspections very well. So I want to get everybody's opinion on that. But before we do that, I haven't been on the last 2 weeks. I was on vacation, and I want to just give everybody a 5-minute on my FISBO program. We talked about the last 2 weeks, but I really wanted to share, and I just couldn't get on from where I was last week on vacation. So before we get into the inspection stuff, let's talk about that. So I've always tried to find unique ways in accomplishing stuff. And one of the things I learned from Tony Robbins is a thing called breaking the pattern. And what I've learned with FISBOs, you can, as soon as you can break the pattern, you can get in the door. And I'll tell you exactly how that works. I knock on the door. Hey, I'm Mitch with eXp Realty. You can immediately see their face go to anger, right? Immediately. You say, whoa, before you say anything, I'm not here to list your house. I just want to make sure you have the right tools. Do you have a seller's disclosure? No one's ever had a seller's disclosure as a for sale buyer, at least that I've run into. And by the way, my closing percentage on this is 75%. So once they do that, I said, do you realize that if you do not disclose anything that could be wrong with your property, that you could be liable for up to 5 years? What are you talking about? And so I go over into that, and really before I'm even done having that conversation, they invite me to look at their house. I've never had anybody not invite me to look at their house. Walking around the house, I'm doing it just like I'm on a listing, looking for leaks in the roof, looking for clutter, anything I would have told the seller, I'm going to tell this guy. And everything I'm saying is, when you find a buyer, I'm not trying to list the house right now. It's not my goal on this conversation. He will ask, or she will ask, why are you doing this? And I always have the same answer. I'm doing this because at some point you're going to know someone looking to buy or sell, and they will, you can say that Mitch is wicked awesome and you should use Mitch. So that's in the house. And then as we're walking around the house, again, giving tips, I let a few things out. Firstly, I say, if you know somebody that comes through the house that doesn't have a realtor and they're not interested in your house, could you give me my cards to them? My last one that I did this on, I got two $850,000 buyer from. It was an $850,000 listing. I never got that listing, by the way, but I did get two $850,000 buyers. And then as I'm walking around a little more, say, by the way, I do work with a lot of buyers and I do charge 3%. Is that okay? They always say yes, 100%. From there, after I leave, I go home and I immediately write a handwritten note, and out of the past, but they still work amazing. Handwritten note, said, hey, it's really great to meet you. I'm here to help you when you find a buyer. I can't write the contract for you, but I can definitely give you advice to a degree, and I'll be in touch soon. And then I call a week later and see how they're doing. And generally, it was usually an average of 1 to 2 weeks before I got the listing. So I did this pretty quickly just because I want to get into our other subjects. But it all really comes down to breaking the pattern. And that was probably one of the best things I've learned from Tony Robbins, is you go and break the pattern. And now that they know you're not there to list their house, they're more apt to have a great conversation with you. And once they love you, they may not love you, but they always love me. Once they do that, then you can get the listing. So that's my brief stuff on it. I'm glad to help you with that if you want to reach out to me at some point. So let's go with inspections, and let's talk to Gail first, because Gail is honestly cuter than all you guys. So let's have Gail talk about, how do you handle inspections? Mainly, how do you handle inspections when they come in and they're bad?
Well, number one, because I'm a listing agent only and I don't work with buyers, for the last 4 years, I was probably the first agent up here that I never put a listing on without every inspection, because then I take those inspections and I turn them into a marketing tool, right? So this way, when I put it into Disclosures.io, if you're not using that, you need to use that. It's a portal where if a seller calls you, a listing agent a buyer's agent calls you and says, how many offers do you have? And in this market, we don't have a lot, right? If any. So we could say, well, we have 7 disclosure packages downloaded. So basically, I always do a home, I do a pest, I do a roof if they have a pool, and then I'll do a sewer if it's on a hill. And, we don't resurface the pool if it needs resurfacing. The only thing I tell my sellers, I go, you got to do health and safety. And they'll go, well, do you pay for that? You know, isn't that the buyer's job? And I go, no, here's the way it works. It's completely illegal in Gail DeMarco's world to pay for anybody's inspection. So I just say it's illegal. It's conflict of interest, conflict of my checkbook. I'm not paying for it. So I tell them, don't, I mean, because let's face it, all those agents that say, we could do it, let the buyer do it. Well, what is the buyer? That's when you have all this shit fall apart. So now when somebody's putting an offer in and they see all the inspections and in disclosures IO in my offer instructions, besides saying seller has requested all buyers to be cross-qualified with seller's lender, this is for pre-qualification purposes only, then they have to sign off on all the inspections on the cover sheet. So they've read the the PES. They know that there's $5,000 worth of work. They know that the pool needs resealed. They know that the roof has, $2,500, and they can't try to renegotiate it later. They can't say, oh, and I always encourage my sellers, hey, because I work with two of the largest pest companies just because I get better deals. And if something goes sideways, they come to my battle. So I always tell them, get your section 1 clearance, which is, fungus, dry rot, termites. And then if the buyer comes with their inspector and they start poking the crap out of everything, which they always do, my company will come back and pay for it. So we don't, and if they go, well, I'm like, listen, that's the scariest part. That's when all deals fall apart, the inspections, because the honeymoon is over. So if you are not doing it, and I think I've kind of set like a little new standard here in our area. They know in the Bay Area buyers, and I don't know where your buyers are coming from, but they're like, oh my God, that's great, because that's what the Bay Area buyers do. So where, then they see it and you get a way better offer.
Right. So I have a question for you. So you do all that disclosure, and this is great having you from the listing side talking about this too, because I'm sure a lot of this will be more on the buyer side. But from the those disclosures, now the buyer comes back and say, great, thanks for all disclosure. I want this, and this fixed. How are you approaching that with your sellers and getting them to respond to you?
Well, in the old days, I used to go like, but now, now I go, it's like we have requests for repairs, right? So, and most of the time, if we have a $20,000 or $50,000 deck, my sellers are going to, like, I have one right now that needs a new roof. He's going to give a $25,000 credit. So, they're prepared. We have those conversations because they're not really going to find, I kind of grease them up a little bit and I go, they're probably going to want the roof fixed, but, California doesn't rain, so we don't really have problems. But, I kind of prepare them. And if the buyer asks for it, I don't go, no way. I just say, I present to the seller and it's their choice. And most of the time they are doing the work ahead of time. They're doing it and the cool thing about disclosures IO, I could see how many times has that agent gone and looked at that roof report. It'll tell me how many, oh my gosh, you went like at this time, you went 7 times. I'll call the seller. You know what? I think let me check in with the buyer's agent and just tell them you're going to get a roof cert. Are you okay with that? We may lose a buyer over this. And I've saved like 2 deals like that. I'll call the buyer's agent. Hey, by the way, the roofer was on vacation. We're getting a roof cert. It's getting fixed. Oh my God, that's great, because my buyer's super, super sensitive about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. That's great stuff. Because I think a lot of us, I've dealt with a lot of sellers and I do similar stuff, except I don't do all the inspections up front, which I love that idea. Of course, California and Florida are very different on how consumers react to stuff like that.
You got to teach me. I'll be there soon.
I know. Yeah. You'll be in for an interesting. We'll just call it an interesting awakening. Brian, let's give you a shot, Brian. There. What do you do with inspections, and how do you deal with your customers and getting them through the gate?
All right. Well, I have a couple different analogies for you. My initial response to this question was I'm the managing broker for 30 plus agents with 400 transactions a year. So I'm representing my agents on each side of every transaction when I'm doing compliance. And the biggest, I would say, deal killer in all of our transactions were around this subject. So I got to see some very creative sides to this, right? So whether it was our agent doing what they're doing on a listing or on a buyer side and the other agent. And I was a party to all this. And I can tell you that The best deals, the ones that stayed together and the ones that were a good example of what we're talking about today, where there was great communication, number one, between the agents going into any transaction. So when you're getting into a transaction and you're listing a property and you've had time to spend with the seller, maybe it's a referral, maybe it's a past client, maybe it's somebody that trusts you right away. The first thing I've always noticed is that, like Gail said, if you have a seller who's willing to do all the disclosures up front, they're probably willing to do some other things. So one of those things would always be to know what the buyer is going to find. The only way you can know what a buyer is going to find is if you have a home inspection yourself. I always recommend it because the average home inspection credit far exceeds the cost of a home inspection. So you're always crediting a buyer something at some point, regardless of the market going up or down. Sellers, and we represent CT Homes, a flipping company, and I'll let Randy chime in on this later. So I oversee, you know, another 100, 200 flips. Even a brand new flip, top to bottom, buyers find stuff. So you always want to know, what is that buyer going to find? And then when they find it, you have to point out that, number one, in California, I don't know about in Florida or other states, but in California, our contract, there's a clause in there that says that the seller is selling the property as is and is under no obligation to repair anything, period. That's the buyer's contract in California. So when a buyer signs a contract and they have a good listing agent and say, wait, yeah, you can have a home inspection, but whatever you find doesn't matter, because this is an as-is purchase contract and the seller is under no obligation. When you talk about that with the listing or the buyer's agent up front and you prepare the disclosures, like Gail was saying, you have these conversations long before hopefully the buyer actually even writes an offer. It makes sense to prepare the buyer, to prepare the offer, and have good communication. So if you don't have good communication with the other agent, then you got to do your best. So I've always recommended a pre-listing home inspection. And what I let my sellers know is, listen, everything on here that's meaningless, it's small, drippy faucet, toilet, whatever, broken screen, flaky paint, just do your best to take care of those. Put them on the disclosure today, but let's take them off the disclosures later if we can get those things done before we find you a buyer. And we'll clean up your disclosure and make a new set of disclosure documents with a new date on it. That's all. Because I can look at their disclosures and determine, hey, well, okay, so you know this is an issue, and this is obviously going to be an issue from a buyer, and we're going to have to disclose that. When we disclose that, that's going to affect things, right? So I work this out, and I always encourage my agents to do the same thing. So let's go the other side of this. Now you're representing a buyer, and you get a home inspection back, or a termite inspection or a chimney inspection or some sort of an inspection, or even the appraisal comes back with things to do. Now, how do you negotiate that in California when you've got a seller who just says, wait, I drew the line in the sand. Your price includes as is, take it or leave it. Now you have to renegotiate with the buyer and the seller to get the seller to understand that, hey, all of these things the buyer found, you have to now disclose them to the next buyer. So let's just deal with this now. So inspections get dealt with, right? Sometimes they can kill a deal. Like Tony Robbins used to say, also, you got to kill the monster before it kills you. Killing the monster is working on these things prior to the final escrow number. So if you can pre-negotiate lists of things that need to be done or inspections and stuff before you actually present offers, best scenario for all of you. But here's that one ninja tip that worked the best for me. Here's what I do know. It doesn't matter who I'm representing. I always encourage the other agent to do this too. If you're representing a seller and a buyer does a home inspection and they give you that one that's got an addendum and it's got 40 items on it, you know, that one, I always pause and say, hey, let me run this home inspection and this list by our home protection company, because we're providing, typically in California, the seller will give the buyer a home inspection, peace of mind clause, $400, add the washer, dryer, the spa, whatever, the roof stuff, $500-600. Well, here's what I learned. You give a home inspection company what the buyers found in the home in their inspection, you give the home protection company your home inspection, and you say, could you run this by your compliance team? What on here, based on the condition of this property, will you guys not warranty? What's going to be pre-existing that you won't cover? I need to know, because those are all I'm going to have my seller repair, and leave it at that. So now you can go back to the buyer with a response that says, hey, my seller is offering you a home protection plan. And we've already run your list by the home protection plan. And yes, that water heater does need to be repaired. Yes, this needs to be repaired. Yeah, there's a safety latch issue by the pool. We're going to repair those things because we know that if you call the home protection plan company in the first year, chances are they're going to tell you that was pre-existing and now we're going to have a problem with your agent and us again. So we don't want to do that. So I always encourage my sellers to always fix all safety hazards. Now, reverse that. I have the buyer. I'm in California and the seller's agent is being like, nope, you got the best deal possible. My seller took the consideration of this house into consideration. It's an as-is deal. He came down, we negotiated, you know it. Great. That's great. So Bobby, I just want to let you know, Bobby, I took the home inspection. I ran that inspection by the home protection plan that your seller is going to provide my buyer. And here's what we know. There's 6 items on here. There's only 6, Bobby, out of the 25. There's only 6 that our buyer found out that your home protection plan that your seller is providing our buyer is not going to cover. We don't want to have that problem.
I don't understand. I got it. I'll do it. But I could search the web for it.
Hi, Jack. So I'll leave it at that. Those are my ninja tips. So whatever you got out of that, can you imagine how easier these deals will flow if you don't have to take on the position of presenting the bad news to the seller or to the buyer? You just let the home protection company or the termite, somebody have some experience in this deal and let them step in and just say, you know what, that is going to be an ish later.
Right. Cool. So I'm flickering here. So I'm going to lose my power again. I can feel it. So I'm going to say this real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Pete to finish up the rest of the thing with Pete. So far, Brian and Gail have talked. So anybody after that. So here's my quick tip on inspections. It's all about expectations. So when I go into an inspection with a buyer, I say there's going to be 40 to 50 things wrong with this property. Even if it's a new construction, you're going to have 40, 50 things wrong with this property. And when they only get 10 or 15 or 20 things, they're like, oh, not too bad. So I set the expectation to be really bad, and it comes down here, and they're all like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And same thing with the seller. When I'm doing a seller, I go, "Look, when they do the inspection, they're going to find 30, 40 things wrong with this property, and they're going to ask for a lot of stuff to be fixed." So then when they come back with only 4 or 5 things to fix, the seller's, "Oh, that's not as bad as we thought it was going to be." Everybody get that? So it's really simple. If you set the expectations, you'll find that and this is just life anyways, right? Set the expectations up here. That it's going to be that bad, and when it comes in that good, it seems great. So I just flick it again, guys. So I'm gonna hop off just so I don't interrupt you guys. Pete, all yours. Dennis, I hope you guys are having fun in Park City. It's a great name for Boston people, right? Park City.
Park City. Nobody understands us here, but we're unraveling everything in Park City. Mitch, stay safe, buddy. We're thinking about you.
Bud. Stay
All
safe,
right, thanks, man. We'll see you guys later on.
All right, great. Finally got on. So we coming to you live from Park City. Dennis and I were at Dave Lawson's office, his new EXP luxury office in Park City. Had a great event last night, but I want to get to the topic matter. I know a few of you guys have already spoke on it. I'm going to go to Dennis next to me on how he sets expectations on investigations and home inspections and those types of things, because we're seeing a lot of disconnect because the sellers are 6 months behind and the buyers are 6 months ahead. So we're in the whitewash where nobody wants to agree on anything, and any little thing causes them to go off the rails, where sooner or later we're going to have to go from Park City to Montana and hang out with Brian on a river runs through it and start fly fishing just to keep our sanity. But Dennis, how do you set that expectation? What do you do?
So for sellers, of course, you'll often have, what is this home inspection? We're selling the property as is. You get all that kind of stuff. And you just really have to tone them down and just say, hey, they're gonna find stuff. Let's see what they come up with first. Let's not make any assumptions. Let's not anticipate anything. Let's just see what they come back with. And I tell them that if it's a something that's a dangerous thing, then they're gonna ask for it, right? Let's just see what they say. And then for a buyer, I always try to tone it down too. Like, hey, this inspector is gonna find 100 things wrong with the house. Let's see what they say. Let's get the report and let's sit down and go over it. And let's really focus on the major things that we're not going to give them a laundry list because they'll scare their seller away. Let's just narrow it down to the things that we really think are super important. And basically that's how we frame it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you set false expectations, or you do not have a strategy session with your clients if you're representing the buyer or representing the seller ahead of time, and really pre-frame the expectations, it gets completely out of whack. You know, some of these people go into it and they hear all these stories. Oh, somebody's going to reduce the price 50, 100 grand in this market because they're desperate to sell, or they're going to give me a brand new roof, or they're going to redo all the carpets or paint the house. That's not what they're selling you guys. It's not a brand new house. In investigations are to investigate it. They're not to change the price, knock things down, so forth. I mean, really what you're looking for is safety items that could affect the integrity of the house. And that's how you want to pre-frame it to them. I always set low expectations. I say typically, you know, 1 of 3 things can happen. The seller can agree to fix nothing. They can agree to fix certain things, or they'll give you a small credit of like $500. And that's how I kind of set it. So it sets the tone with my buyers where they're not coming in there guns blazing, asking for 25, 50, 100 grand off the price. And they're trying to come to a middle with the seller where it's a win-win, not where they're trying to overwhelm or try to kind of bulldoze the seller over, because a lot of sellers will push back. They still think they should have gotten multiple offers. They still feel that they should have put it on the market earlier. They're playing Monday morning quarterback. They're saying I should have thrown the Hail Mary instead of the down and out. And, you know, they're all in the past. The buyers are all spastic. Any little thing is setting them off the rails and getting them extremely sensationalized on what's happening with the market. So you have to constantly hold their hand, be in communication with them, and really walk them through it and say, this is what's realistic, that isn't. You know, how do you feel about it? Because some of them may come up and say, I want to ask for 30 things to be repaired. I want all the doorknobs tightened. I want this, I want that. Typically what I say is, let's just focus on the big stuff, not the small stuff that's going to sweat people. Let's keep it down to 1, 2, or 3 like key items that you really want to have addressed that are affecting the integrity of the house and so forth. So the biggest mistake I see agents making, you guys, is when they write up or type up the request for repair, they write a laundry list like they're building a city. It's unbelievable. I got one the other day, it was 59 things. I called the lady, I said, I think you left a few off. She said, what did I leave off? I said, replacing the foundation, reframing the house. She said, no, seriously. I said, why would you send me 59 items? The seller's going to look at it and shut down and say, I'm not going to do anything. They're not realistic. They're not being reasonable. They're not trying to work with me. You're better off coming and saying, here are the 3 items: electrical, plumbing, safety items. And then you list out what those things are, because they're going to have to get a licensed bonded professional electrician, a licensed bonded professional plumber, a licensed bonded professional GC, whatever it is. And it's just, it doesn't look overwhelming. That's a big mistake a lot of agents make, and it ends up costing them the transaction. So that's the key. If the seller says no, then you have to have a safety conversation and say, look, even if we don't buy the house, what we found is going to affect the integrity of the house and could affect the stability of the house. It's a safety item that any appraiser will call out, any bank will probably ask to have repaired. And let me ask you this, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, how would you feel if you were buying the house and there was an active leak in the roof? Would you buy the house, or would you expect that to be repaired? Because you don't know how that's going to affect the integrity of the house before you close. I mean, we could get, no pun intended, a hurricane come in or some kind of rainstorm. Next thing you know, the roof's caving in, but you've already agreed to the request for repairs. So you have to really look at that and guide them through it, you guys. It's calmer heads prevail. You know, stay calm, don't get emotional, keep it low, and just really walk them through it. That's a big thing. You know, have the reports to back it up, have certain estimates to back it up. And guess what? When you're trying to get estimates for any type of repairs, do me a favor, line up all the independent contractors at the same time to be there. Don't have them spread out over a week. All you're going to do is piss off the sellers, where they're going to say, oh, they're dragging it out, dragging it out, dragging it out. But you have to have control of your buyers in this marketplace. If you don't, you're you might as well work for Uber or Lyft because you're going to put them back in your car where we are at $7.19 a gallon right now. And you're going to be driving them around with a mustache on your car saying, hey, here's the next house. That's it. It's a waste of time. You got to make deals because while you're doing that, the rates are going to go up. All right. I said my piece. I'm out. Who are we going to? Bobby, you're bouncing around like a bull in a cage. What's going on there? Did you send
Good
hair
morning.
products to Cameron? Cameron probably needs hair products in 100-mile-an-hour wind. I mean, something. I mean, your
Good
hair
morning,
doesn't even
everybody.
move. Listen, that
All right.
hair right there is hurricane proof. Go ahead.
All right, guys. So thanks a lot. Bobby Martin's in the San Diego market. And first, I'm going to cover kind of on the seller side of things. Obviously, we ebb and flow on the seller side as far as how we do things. In the last 2 years, I wasn't doing a lot of pre-inspections with the exception of the termite inspection. I think it's important, in a busy market where, you can get sold as is. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot of upfront money when you don't have to. Now we're going into a different market. It's a different game. Now the pre-inspections and making sure there's no surprises is more important than ever. But either way, disclosing everything up front. So if you have a Zinsco panel in the electrical panel that's going to be problematic on a report, then disclose that up front in either the disclosures or in an email. You just simply send over to the agent, hey, this is everything that we know about the property. We've put in the contract sold as is. So therefore, we don't want to have another rounds of negotiation. Even in this market, we can still do those kinds of things. So I think it's really important. Let's see here, I got some notes here. One thing for sellers, I always tell them, make sure you leave some money on the table. Okay, don't just sell it at a price and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything else. Leave another 3, 4, 5 grand left over that in the event that you do need to give a credit. And I always recommend to sellers to give the credit. And on the buy side, I always recommend a credit. I think it's just easier, cleaner. We're not checking all these invoices. If you're a seller, it could open up a bigger can of worm if it's something that's bigger than they thought. So that's a little problematic. Let me see here. Make sure you're getting all code issues done on the seller side, water heater, smoke detectors, all that stuff should be done up front. So that way, when you're getting an appraisal, there's no issues with the smoke detectors and all of that. Then the appraiser's got to come back out, in some situations. So not ideal. Now, on the buy side, this is really, really the time for you to show that you actually give a shit about your client. Excuse my French. Because we all talk a game of like, hey, I love my clients. I'll do anything for them. And then once they get into escrow, it's like commission breath. You're walking in, you're like, hey, I already cashed my $20,000 check that I'm making off of you. Oh, wait, what? There's some problems with the inspection? Oh, no, that's fine. Like that, you come off as such a jerk and such an ingenuine type of person. And so you can and you will lose clients in those situations. I've seen it happen on my team with agents on my team pushing a little hard to get a buyer to agree to things. But it's all about expectations. Same thing goes for sellers. We get the expectations in the right place depending on the market conditions. The last 2 years, we were telling people right up front, you're going to get 0 and you're going to love it. You're going to get the house and that's all that matters. If you get more than that, then fantastic. But buy the house at a price that the seller is giving you 0 and you won't have that problem. Also for agents, we need to find out these things up front, before we go to the inspection. Ask the question, does the seller know, is there anything wrong with the house that we should know about up front? Those are important questions to ask at some point. So now the inspection starts at your planning session. Okay, so when you sit down with a seller or with a buyer, walk them through the whole process. Once we get into escrow, we're going to do an inspection. After our meeting, I'm going to send you an email with 3 inspectors that we work with, but you're welcome to use whoever you want. We want you to be able to pick whoever you want, but here's 3 guys that we like. And so right after the right after the planning session, you should start sending that information to them. Tell them to pick the person now, because once you get into escrow, you got to do the earnest money deposit, the loan, and all this other stuff, order the appraisal. The last thing you want to be doing is going on Yelp looking for an inspector. So if you can get that handled right up front, then that's one thing that's already done. And it's real quick and easy if you have a template in your CRM. Now, when you're actually setting up the inspection, make sure the seller knows that you're coming. Nothing is worse than showing up to a property and the seller doesn't know that you're coming. So make sure that that's there, or that they know. I usually have the inspector start, and then myself or the buyer's agent will show up to the property about an hour in. And we tell the seller or the buyer to do the same. Sometimes they want to be there a little bit longer, but I usually try to push them to come towards the end or the last half of it. And you know, for the most part, it works out fine. If the seller's not there, if it's vacant, we get a 1-day code from the seller. On your agent's visual, be super detailed, protect yourself from any lawsuits. We don't want you know, to be spending time in mediation and arbitration because you didn't have a very detailed agent's visual and that you are hiding things. So a couple other tips. Watch out for video surveillance or audio surveillance. This is a big thing now. You got people who've got cameras all over their house. So keep your conversations to a minimal, especially if you see cameras around. You know, I wouldn't talk about any of this stuff at the house. I would just let them know you're going to get a full report detailed with all the pictures. After you get it, we'll sit down and talk about it. And just like Mitch said, you want to get their expectations in the right place. There's going to be 20, 30, 40 items that pop up. They pop up on all of the reports. So now this might be an unpopular decision with some of the other people on the panels. But I always tell people, look, if you see another property that excites you more than this one while we're in escrow, let us know and we'll go see it. Because I'm not attached to the outcome of this sale. I'm attached to your happiness and to making sure that you get the property that's going to fit your family needs for a lot longer. So if I have to do more work, I don't care. So that's really the message that you have to send, because if you're doing that, that's when they fall in love with you, and because they know that this person really is looking out for my best interest. I don't like kids at the inspection, so try not to have kids. But if they don't have a sitter and they have to bring a kid, then, you know, depending on their age, bring things for them, like maybe you know, some crayons and coloring books or Matchbox cards. If you want to get to the heart of your clients, get to there through their kids. If you're nice to their kids, they are going to love you forever. One of the closing gift ideas that I do is a 529 contribution to their child. If they don't have a 529 set up for a college plan, I set them one up for them, and I continually feed that when they give me referrals. Not huge numbers, but it's you know, it's a nice gesture. Make sure you're not overselling. You know, don't talk about how amazing this house is over and over and over again. Point out the things that are wrong, point out the things that are right. And then one of the things I like to do is I look for highest and best use of the property. And again, this is your time to really get to know your clients. And, you know, I mean, most of the time you're just in and out on these meetings. Now you're with them for like an hour, hour and a half. Be ready to have a conversation with them. Be ready to shoot the shit. Bring them coffee, bring them donuts, bring them cookies, whatever it takes to make sure that they know that you care. We talked a little bit about setting the expectations. On your RR, remember one thing: you do not represent the seller, okay? You represent the buyer, and the most important thing that you should be thinking about is, how do I make sure my buyer knows that I'm representing their interests in every single way? And again, not being attached to the outcome of the sale. I always tell people, I'm not attached to the outcome. If this is not the right fit for you, or if there's something really bad on the inspection that you can't overcome, we're out of here and we'll go to the next one. So if you do that, it's reverse psychology to some extent, because now their guards are down and they feel good. And genuinely, I want them to buy the right house. So if you are going to ask for a repair request, I usually ask for a credit. I usually don't want people to do the repairs, but if they do, make sure it's a licensed inspector, or not licensed inspector, licensed contractor and bonded and all that stuff. And then also, when it comes to asking for the right items, health, I always tell them there's three things: health and safety issues, things that don't work, and then the cosmetic stuff. Cosmetic, don't even bother. That's not, if you can see it, then you shouldn't be asking for it. But health and safety issues and things that don't work, absolutely. But then always look to the home warranty company for solving some of the potential little stuff. So that's pretty much it. It was a mouthful, but hopefully it was all good stuff. And that's it.
That was cash money. I love the 529 contribution plan. That's awesome. Look at you're bouncing around like a bull in a cage as usual. And you guys got to remember, anytime Bobby goes to a home inspection with a character like that, they definitely have video surveillance. I'm just letting you know. All right. I wanted to touch upon one thing that he talked about. If you're a listing agent and you're taking listings in this type of market where inventory is building, the demand is falling, things are changing, get your inspections ahead of time before you put it on the market. The reason being, because then you can approach someone and say, look, you can do your own inspection. We're going to give you a full package up front. In most states, if you do that, it shortens the timelines legally for them on the contract, number one. Number two, it says we did our due and gives the seller the opportunity to fix some of those items prior to coming on the market. So it shows that he has pride of ownership, or he or she, right? The third reason is it says to the buyer, we know what we're selling. We have the idea, we know what the deal is. So when you're negotiating, and this just happened to me the other day, you guys, on one of my listings, and I'll share this with you, we negotiated with a couple different buyers. We negotiated down, and what I put in the counter offer was, by accepting this price, the buyer fully understands and agrees that there'll be no credits, no price adjustments, and no repairs made. And they, by confirming signature on this counter offer, you are accepting these terms and moving forward. What did they do? They still did their inspections. They came back. They wrote up a request for repairs. Their agent's a good guy. He's kind of newer. He didn't know how to kind of handle it with them. They were first-time home buyers. They asked for $17,000 more off the price. I came back and said, look, I looked through everything. All of this had been disclosed. That's why we accepted that price. Read the verbiage that I wrote in the second counteroffer. You read it back to me. And I said, that means it's as is. It doesn't mean you can't ask. It just means we don't have to do it. We gave them, we threw in like a perk for them. We didn't do any of the repairs. I don't think you should ever open up that can of worms with contractors, because you don't know how reliable they are. And then you're on the hook in case something goes wrong again, and everything is always attached. But anyways, we were able to get it resolved within 24 hours and move forward. Time kills deals in this market. If you're waiting to get all this stuff together, to get the inspections together, to get your disclosures together, to get your agent visual together, it will kill deals. I guarantee you something else will pop up that they'll go check out and they'll fall off, or they'll talk to their cousin Maury, who used to have a TV show, who told you all the things that were wrong with everything in society, and they get scared, or they watch, CNN or CNBC or one of these shows where Lester Holt's coming on and tell them that the whole housing market is going to depreciate and fall, and it's going to be the worst time to buy. You have to keep everybody moving forward and keep your timelines tight on inspections. They do not need 20 or 30 days to do inspections. It's like the kiss of death. So I just wanted to say that, write that verbiage in. It's just going to insulate you. It's going to show your sellers that you're working on their behalf to protect their equity. That's what it's all about. That's what I wanted to follow up with. Look at Bobby's already left the building. Like Elvis has left the building. Here he comes again. Now we're going to go over to the real estate opportunity guy. He used to be the real estate old guy, formerly known as that. Craig Lurch out of Philadelphia. Give us what you do when it comes to inspections.
Hey, Pete, by the way, Jerry just asked, can you type that verbiage in down below that you did as one of the questions she had? So, hey, opportunity starts absolutely when your first meeting with your seller and your buyer. Bring it on the table. Put the elephant on the table. Put on the table the owner, the seller, the buyer. Let's talk about buyers first. Write this word down, and it does not show up. It's a Philly word. It's an ROG word. Horribilize. If there's Wikipedia, I'm starting the word buyers horribilize. What does that mean? If they see a crack in the ceiling, it's $500 to re-rock the ceiling. It's $5,000 to them. So your goal is to get those issues out of the way in the beginning so you don't have these major markups. It's the 10X rule. Buyers 10X, sellers minus 10X on everything. So what we're going to do is, if we are doing any inspections, and every state's different and every company's policy, then there's some people on here from different companies. Bottom line comes down to it, find out what your company's comfortable with, where your lawyers or their lawyers are going to back you up, and then you go that direction. I know that when we do it in our area, we disclose everything on it. The checklist that we do repairs, we put the receipts behind. So then the buyer accepts the inspection, and the only things that they're allowed to request and or open the box up again is if something is not on that list. But the inspectors, the 2 inspectors that I know that I recommend to the seller, they're going to put it on the list. They're going to put every little thing, and they're going to mark it like Bobby was saying: safety, material, and then cosmetic. All right. Recommendations don't happen. I love the ones that say hot water heaters are 10 to 12 years old. It's recommended they're replaced. Okay, so that recommend you put your 80-year-old grandmother down because she's 80 years old. I literally say that. So you got to put it in a perspective of that. Get the horribilization out of it. And also, when I'm working with my buyers, I say there's nothing perfect. Let's think about this. Is your relationship with your significant other perfect? No. Is your job perfect? Is everything in your world perfect? No. So that's right. The house isn't going to be perfect, even if it's new. So let's put new aside. You're going to have anywhere between 1% to 3% right off the bat of things to do. And that's not bad in the big world. Wouldn't you like to know that you're only 1% to 3% perfect of being your best self? And once you put it in that perspective of understanding it, they understand it. There's a little bit of wiggle room, that it's not going to be everything on the list. We're going to put some of the list over here, and we're going to deal with the major part of the list. What we've also done is we look into the townships now, and we're doing this a little more. We got away from it in the hot market. The townships that do have inspections that are going to be required, we're getting them, giving them to the seller, and we're pretending them we're the inspector and having the seller do them in advance, because then we can eliminate those issues that'll be on the home inspection also. So let's talk about the seller. How do you deal with a seller that's got their cleats in the sand because they didn't get the price their friend got? They're getting less. They didn't sell in a week. They're all ticked off. They're floating 2 houses at this time, and it's going to happen. All right. Let them understand that if they don't do the repairs and if they don't do the credits, they're buying their house back for that. The sale price might be $900,000 and they paid $500 for it, but now all of a sudden there's $8,000 of repairs over and above what we have to do, and the buyer wants the credit or walk-in. I literally say to the seller, so do you want to buy your house back for $8,000? They're like, I'm not. Yeah, you are. Because if you don't do it, you go back to the market, and the next buyer is going to know exactly what happened because we have to extend it. So it's not a matter of sometimes how we say it, it's what we say. And remember, we've said this before, Pete, 10% is in the words, 35% is in tonality. I'm speaking very excited in all this stuff right now because we're in a short amount of time. And then 55% is in body language. So be with them, sit with them, know that they're not going to be happy. All right. And understand, take control of the inspections. Make sure your sellers are not there. How I explain it to them, because a lot want to be there. I said, so if you were to have a physical at the doctor's office, do you want everybody sitting around watching? And they're like, no. I said, then don't sit around watching the home inspector. They're going to get very uncomfortable. And they're going to go look for more reasons. Go out, have lunch. I'll even buy you lunch. Get out. Me or one of my team are going to be here. Let them go through it. We're going to see what it is. We can't change the outcome. It's just like you can't change the outcome of your blood test. It is what it is. Boom. Let's face it and deal with it. So just some of the ideas coming from Philly, and stay calm. Don't be attached to the outcome. Don't spend your money before the commission. Don't let them see the blood in the water. And they're all going to come to you to negotiate your commission. They're all going to come to you. Just remember, like Gail said, you don't own the house. They're not my problems. That's a you problem. Don't be stupid either, but at the same time, make the deal work, because there is time on value of money.
It's a great point, you guys. And just remember, another soundbite is you're not a participant in the house, you're a facilitator. Okay, that's a big thing. You're not a participant, you're a facilitator doing a service for a professional fee. That's it. You know, if they want to give you part equity, yeah, then we can talk on my professional fees and how I make a living for my family. You know, just like you wouldn't ask them for part of their paycheck for what they do. It is what it is. Keep them moving forward. You know, the ROG had a lot of great points there, you guys. Keep everybody moving forward. It's super important. And the other thing too is you got to keep people on track and keep them realistic because they'll psych themselves out. You know, don't let it drag on and on and on. Go ahead.
Hey, and Key, what did you just hear Pete said? Professional fees. We've been saying this in other guys. Stop talking about commissions. They're my professional fees for doing the work or doing the transaction or representing you. It's a whole nother animal, puts you as a different level than the other agents that you're working with.
Yeah, commissions are like wages. Professional fees are elevated. You guys, you're a professional doing a professional service. You're guiding them and so forth. So who just walked in here, the dynamo himself, Dynamite Dave Lawson, the listing machine in Park City. It was his birthday yesterday. Look, he's making a special appearance. Dave, fill in with these guys what you do to help your sellers get through the whole investigation process. And if you are dealing with buyers in this type of market, what do you say to them to get them through this process? Step on up.
Well, in Utah, Park City or Salt Lake, our broker, most of the brokerages, they don't allow us to go to inspections. So we don't have the liability. When we offer a diligence form that they fill out when they write the offer. And what that does is it gives them a list of every single thing they would ever need to investigate during the due diligence period. And I really love it there. And then when I buy a house in California and it's like the agent is there and all that, I got to tell you, it kind of makes me nervous. But the rules in different states are different. The bottom line is that we're an advisor. And I liked what I've heard here from when I just came in. I just came in from our team meeting. And first of all, I probably should back up. And I wanted to say thanks to Pete and Dennis. We had our grand opening here. They flew out to Park City. That's why we're in here in the office together. And the support that I got from them and what I'm learning with all of you and this mastermind group, I can't thank you guys enough. My son made me make a quote of why I moved to EXP. And basically it's like, I'm just blown away with the collaboration. So I just want to thank everybody because this is not normal. You know, normally I'm in competition with each and every one of you, especially if you're in my marketplace. And it is so different here that it's super exciting. But anyway, so I don't really have a lot of advice there. But as far as when you're working with a seller, I really liked what I think Craig said, you know, for $8,000, do you want to buy it back? We are in a market right now that people need to make deals happen. If we think that the prices are going to be going down, waiting is a horrible strategy. And when you get a deal, you try to get it done. And then I also really liked what Bobby said is when you're working with a buyer, I have a saying, if you always do what's right for the client, in the end, you win. So what did Bobby say? He's under contract with somebody. Maybe there's a little bit of issues with the inspection or and what did you say, Bobby? Hey, I am not attached to the outcome. If this is not the house for you, or you find another house during the time while we're still in due diligence, and you don't worry about me, I'll do more work. I could not agree more, right? And then the last thing I want to say is that we do a lot of things behind the scenes, and we do things that help our clients. But I want you all to remember this, just one thing, okay? Bobby, if you do something for a client that is over and above, over the top, but the client doesn't know you're doing it, it has zero value, right? So when we do things for people, and you don't say it in a bragging way. You just let people know, right? So that's basically all I have. But thank you, everybody.
All right, I like that, Dave. I just want to comment on a couple other things before I get to Randy, who's now changed his concept. He's gone from Bali. He's now down in Cabo. But here's a couple of things, you guys. If you don't go to an inspection, I can guarantee you, you're going to lose the transaction. Somebody has to be there, whether it's you, an associate agent, somebody on your team. You have to have somebody present, okay, on the seller side as well as the buyer side. If you just let the inspector go in there and the buyer brings their whole family and you take off for another appointment, I guarantee you it's going to completely implode. I've been doing this a long time. I guarantee that. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to get across real fast, I'm going to let Randy bring it home, is it's really important, you guys, when you're doing inspections, not only to set the expectations, we've established that, but to be the professional and really listen to what people's concerns are. Listen to the summary that the investigation people give you and take notes. And if you can ever have your seller on a Zoom or something, they shouldn't be there for liability reasons, but if they could be on Zoom or even on a conference call where they can hear it straight from the home inspector, that's better. And then you can discuss it afterwards in private. But the key is to keep it moving forward. They're going to react. The sellers are going to react in private the way that you react with your energy. So if you call them and say, holy shit, I can't believe they're asking for this, they're going to shut down because they're going to feed off that energy. Now, if you call them and say, you know, they made a lot of valid points. They found some safety and health issues in the house that definitely need to be addressed because it affects the integrity of your house. And I want to review those with you and they're logical requests. And let me just go through it with you and let's go down and put our heads together because two heads are better than one. And I'm on your team. And let's see if we can get it to the finish line so we can get you to where you want to go. Let's not lose it over a couple $1,000 or a few little repairs. Let's get you to the finish line. So then you realize you can live up to your life the way you want to do it because there's no tomorrow. There's no second chances. You got to keep it moving. And you have to also guide the other agents. The other agents are getting fed up or they're saying, hey, you know something, my guy wants this or else or whatever. You have to say to them, listen, I don't own the house. I'll do the very best I can. Let me talk to my client. I'll get back to you. All right, that's it. That's how you address that. Randy, down in Cabo, Valle con Dios, bring it home. Tell me what you guys do. I know you deal with a lot of investors. I know investors show up a lot of times and say, hey, we're going to do inspections just for our own purposes. We'll take it as is. But there is kind of this taboo failing out there in the marketplace that investors do that. And then they wait to the last minute and they say, just kidding, I need this amount of money off the price because I have to repair a bunch of things I didn't anticipate. How do you approach that? How do you deal with investors?
Yeah, so I think what you're touching on is when, you know, an investor is buying a distressed property. So maybe we'll leave that for another topic. I want to maybe stick to the retail side more, right? So one thing I would say, because everybody said amazing things on the buyer, you know, when working with buyers, one thing I would add, it will really help you if you start creating a list of contractors, independent contractors that you can call and rely on for quotes, right? Because that I can tell you when the buyer gets that long inspection, they automatically get freaked out, right? And the way you calm them down and say, look, let's identify the big items, right? Especially like the mechanicals and things that are safety related, structural, and say, look, everything can be fixed. I always say that, like everything on this list can be fixed. So don't, you know, but what are the major things that are the deal breakers for you? And then let's get quotes for them, right? And if getting quotes takes you weeks, then you're going to probably lose the deal because the buyers are going to back out because they're going to just freak out. Too many nights of worry will make them just back out. So the faster you can get those inspections done, or I mean, the quotes getting the quotes will be better. So make sure you have an electrician that you trust, plumber, HVAC guy, roofer, and also prep your buyers that, hey, some of these guys are going to charge you $50 to do an inspection, $100 to maybe do the inspection. So I would say, look, if you love the house, then let's proceed with this. And it's worth the investment of the $50 here and $100 there. These are the big items you worry about, because we're going to then ask specifically for the amount of money based on these quotes. Otherwise, we can't make up numbers. If we try to make up numbers, then the deal blows up because the seller gets mad, you're frustrated, and you really get to nowhere. So I'm like, we need data to support what we're about to ask. And we can't get the data without our quotes from professionals. So let's work on that next. Are you comfortable with doing that? And if they're like, well, we don't really love the house that much, and I don't want to spend, $300 on inspections by these professionals. I'm like, all right, well, then let's move on to the next house then. Let's not waste our time, because you're going to then spend more money and be more frustrated. So then let's just move on now. Let's cut our losses fat now, right? So anyway, so that's tip on there. But I'm going to finish on when you're representing investors, when let's say they renovate the home and they put the home on the market and you're going to list their properties, right? I do that a lot. And of course, we're now sitting in this, investors are like, well, we did all the work. We ain't doing any more to this house. So you better tell those buyers that we ain't touching anything else, right? That's common because they already spent the money. And especially in a seller's market, in a buyer's market where they feel like the profitability is getting squeezed, right? They want to tell the agent, like, you better tell those agents that are bringing in buyers that we're not doing anything else. And they're like, well, let's hold on. Let's make sure you understand you didn't build a new home, right? So let's make sure that if there's no safety or structural or things of that nature that come up, then I get it. But if those things do come up, then we will have to address that, right? So it's, again, setting expectations, right? One thing I would say, every time I represent an investor, and again, I was overseeing the sales department for our own flipping company. So I was selling our own flips for many years with my team. So we made sure that every single inspection, our project manager was at the inspection, right? So whoever is the investor you're representing, they will have a project manager. If the investor is the project manager, that's who should go there. But I make sure that the buyer's agent knows, hey, by the way, we're going to have a project manager there, or we say, hey, the investor will be there. We want to be proactive and see if there's any, safety, structural, and you got to make sure you say these words, right? Because it could also go the other way. If they hear like, oh, you want to be proactive, so that means you're going to fix everything that the buyer will ask for. No, that's not what you mean, right? So you got to say what you mean and say, hey, this investor I work with, they're really proactive. They want to be there. They want to make sure that they hear of these safety related issues, structure related issues, health related issues, so they could get on those things if these things comes up, right? Again, so you're not saying that they'll fix everything, right? So because buyer agents also they're not always used to having someone from the sell side being at the inspection. So you have to set that expectation. And we always want to be there, in terms of the investor, either the project manager or the owner himself, if they're the project manager. That's literally for the investor.
We're at 11:01.
Okay, I'm going to finish. So for the investor, that's the only time they get to actually meet the buyer and gauge who the buyer really is. It's a really important time for them. And you get to see their emotional reaction to what the inspector is saying, which will kind of tell you where is this transaction heading from this point forward, right? So yeah, so that's one. And then have project manager there. And you got to set expectations with the buyer's agents when you're now negotiating on price. And I like what Pete said, like, look, my client will take this offer. It's just, however, we want to made sure you understand, please don't come back here with a laundry list of stuff. If they're safety related or structural, and I do this part verbally if I don't have a pre-inspection done. So I just communicate that verbally to the buyer's agent, right? Look, my client will take this offer, and please, like, we're a team here, right? I always try to be a team. I always say, hey, we're on the same team. You, the buyer's agent, myself, the seller's agent, we're on the same team. We got this. We want this to close. So my client, I got them to agree to your price, your client's price. However, please don't come with a laundry list. And I know you don't have full control over it, but make sure you do what you can, right, to limit that list to the non-negotiable deal breakers on there. So expectations, once again, right? And then last, I would say, when there's deadlines and the buyers absolutely need to move into the house, and the investor wants to sell a house on a pre-agreed upon contract date, and know when you're representing investors, they want to close on that deadline, on that day, no matter what, because they have financing costs that keep adding up every day, right? So they're always going to push you as the agent representing them, like, no, we better close on that day and we better figure out these repairs quick and da. What we've done in the past is we basically prepay for some of the work that might take a week or two to fix, right? And I would tell you, most investors will like to probably fix some of the stuff themselves because they get better pricing from their contractors. So what we've done in the past many times representing investors, if the buyer asks for something, let's say it's $5,000 for, some major electrical issue, and they want to, they want $10,000 to fix it, but my investor can fix it for $3,000, right? Because of the wholesale pricing. And it might take us 2 weeks to do it because of the contractor's delays. We will agree on, look, my investor is going to prepay this contractor for this work, or we're going to put the money in escrow for this work. It's not going to be touched, right, until this work gets done. Let's close on the property, and then we'll coordinate with you, Mr. Agent, after closing for my contractor to get into the house and fix those items, right? So we can close on time because maybe the buyer needs to close and move in, or the seller is pushing on you because of their financing costs, right? So just know you can pre-negotiate that as long as you put money in escrow, right? That sits there for the contractor repairs, or you prepay the contractors that you trust as the investor, and then show the receipts to the buyer's agent. And I'm done.
Okay, good. I think that's great stuff. We went over a little bit, you guys. I'll leave you with this last thought, and just to kind of attach to what Randy said, when you're dealing with contractors or new construction or flips or any of those types of things, I usually pre-frame to the other agent. I say, listen, great news. The person who did this flip or did the contractor or did the rehab, did the remodel, they're super present in their projects. They're present, which means they pay attention to it. They're not just off in the distance saying this is it and that's all. And I think that sets that expectation. That was great stuff, Randy. Thanks so much. Saying prayers for everybody down in Florida. We have a lot of our, EXP family down there and other agents that are connected to us. So, be aware, help people, check in on them. It goes a long way. Everybody have a great weekend. Next week, we're going to pick it up again. Come here and utilize some of these nuggets that we're handing out. Okay, great seeing everybody. Good stuff. See you soon.
You guys.